The Galactic Mayhem wasn't much to look at. In fact, it wasn't much at all. Just a barely functional sublight freighter held together by stubborn optimism and duct tape. The kind of ship you'd use if you wanted to move a load of space turnips to the next rock over and didn't care if the hull decided to take a vacation halfway there. Captain Plinkett lounged in his command chair, which was really just an old recliner someone had bolted to the floor, suspiciously stained and as creaky as his knees. He wore a jacket he thought made him look dashing, but mostly just made him look like a discount space pirate. You know, he said, scratching his chin where a beard might be if he could grow one. I sometimes think this ship was designed by a committee of people who'd never seen a ship before. I think it was designed by monkeys, replied Jax, the ship's engineer, not looking up from the panel she was pretending to fix. Her hair was a wild mess of curls, mostly because she hadn't seen a comb since last Tuesday. Really drunk monkeys, Plinkett chuckled. You're giving him too much credit. The mood on the bridge was the usual mix of banter and the vague smell of something burning. Probably the wiring, but nobody had the heart to check. The Mayhem wasn't exactly the pinnacle of modern engineering. She was more a museum of poor life choices, one rusted bolt away from a total systems failure. Incoming message, the ship's AI chimed in, its voice a smooth, synthesized nightmare that sounded far too cheerful given the circumstances. Priority 1. Priority 1, Plinkett raised an eyebrow. Priority 1 means someone important wants to talk to us. Or, my personal favorite, someone wants to kill us. Can't it be both? Jax asked, smirking as she hit the panel with a wrench for good measure. The holo display flickered to life, showing the face of their employer. A face that could curdle milk and was responsible for at least 3 ulcers in the room. Or would be, if ulcers were still a thing. Captain, the voice growled, 2 parts gravel, 1 part barely concealed contempt. We've got a situation. Oh good, Plinkett replied, his voice dripping with sarcasm. I was worried I'd have to spend my day in peace. Cut the crap, Plinkett. We've got unknowns on your tail. Unknowns? That's a new one. Usually, we get pirates or tax collectors. No known design, continued the growl. They're fast, and they're not answering hails. Maybe they're shy, Jax offered, twirling a spanner. Whatever they are, the employer snapped, they seem very interested in your cargo. Plinkett's gaze shifted to the crates stacked haphazardly in the cargo hold. Full of something someone somewhere was willing to pay through the nose for, but even Plinkett was too lazy to check the manifest to find out what. Figures, he sighed. I always knew hauling illegal flamingos would come back to bite me. Get rid of them before they get rid of you, the boss added, the screen going dark without so much as a goodbye. Well, that was informative, Plinkett said, leaning back and resting his boots on the console. And here I thought today was going to be dull. What's the plan, fearless leader? Jax asked, and it was impossible to miss the hint of mockery. Respect was a currency she didn't trade in often. We run, Plinkett said with a shrug. Preferably not screaming like cows on barbecue day. Jax snorted. Running, my favorite. Good thing our ship's faster than a frozen snail in a vacuum. I'm touched by your confidence, Plinkett replied dryly. Let's see if we can coax a bit more speed out of her. You mean pray? Exactly. Pray, swear, or threaten. Whatever works. The Mayhem shuddered as Jax worked her magic, cursing under her breath. Despite appearances, she had a knack for coaxing life from things that should rightfully be dead. Like the ship's engines, or Plinkett's career. Ship on intercept course, the AI chimed in, sounding almost excited at the prospect of a good chase. They're closing fast. Great, Plinkett muttered. Just what I needed. More friends. Maybe they're bringing cake, Jax quipped, her fingers dancing over the controls. Everyone loves cake. If it's cake, I'll eat my hat. I thought you lost your hat in that poker game. Fine, I'll eat yours. The ship rattled as they pushed the engines harder, the universe outside a blur of stars that probably looked better if you'd ever had the time to appreciate them. Any idea what they want? Jax asked, glancing at the sensors. Besides turning us into space debris? No clue, Plinkett replied. But I bet it's not to invite us to a tea party. The alien ship loomed closer on the holo display, a sleek, predatory design that looked expensive enough to make Plinkett's eyes water. That's a fancy bit of tech, he muttered. Too fancy, Jax agreed. Looks like they've got more money than sense. I hate them already, Plinkett said. Let's see if we can't make them hate us back. The Mayhem shuddered violently as they veered off course, executing a maneuver that would probably make any self-respecting pilot cringe. But then again, Plinkett had never been accused of being self-respecting. They're still on us, Jax warned, checking the readouts. Persistent buggers. Must be our charm, Plinkett said with a grin that was all teeth and no humor. Or maybe they just like a good game of cat and mouse. Except with a mouse, Jax pointed out. Details, details. The console beeped angrily, lights flashing like a disco gone wrong. Warning, the AI announced, shields are at 20%. Good to know, Plinkett said through gritted teeth. We'll add that to our list of things to pretend to care about. They're hailing us, Jax said, eyebrows raising. Guess they found their voice. Plinkett hesitated, then shrugged. Might as well see what they want. Maybe they're just lonely. The screen flickered, and the face that appeared was as alien as it was unpleasant. A snarl twisted through what might generously be called its features, eyes glowing with the kind of malice that could sour milk across a star system. Surrender your cargo, it hissed, voice like gravel wrapped in barbed wire. Or be destroyed. Plinkett sighed, rubbing his temples. I miss the days when people threaten you with a polite letter instead of immediate annihilation. Not much of a negotiator, is he? Jax said, crossing her arms. Not much, Plinkett agreed. I guess we'll have to pass on that offer. Your refusal is noted, the alien intoned, eyes narrowing. Prepare to die. Yeah, well, get in line, Plinkett muttered as the screen went dark. We already had plans. The mayhem groaned as it dodged another volley of cannon fire, the universe outside lighting up like a particularly aggressive fireworks display. We can't take much more of this, Jax warned, her voice grim. Then let's make them take more, Plinkett replied, setting his jaw. Arm the turrets. Let's give them a proper welcome. Captain, Jax said with a glint of something that might have been respect. You're insane. You say that like it's a bad thing, Plinkett replied with a wink. Now let's see if we can't ruin their day. The mayhem's turrets roared to life, spitting fire into the void, and for a moment, just a moment, it felt like the universe itself was holding its breath. Direct hit, Jax crowed, punching the air. That ought to give them something to think about. Good, Plinkett said, grinning like a man who'd just hit the jackpot. Let's see if they're as good at running as they are at chasing. The alien ship veered off, smoke trailing from a wound in its otherwise perfect hull. They're breaking off pursuit, Jax reported, almost sounding disappointed. Guess they didn't like our hospitality, Plinkett said, slumping back into his chair, the adrenaline drain hitting him like a freight train. Now let's get the hell out of here before they change their minds. The Galactic Mayhem limped away, her crew silent as they watched the void swallow the enemy ship. Think they'll be back? Jax asked. Probably, Plinkett replied, rubbing his eyes. But that's a problem for future us. Present us just needs a drink. To surviving another day, Jax said, raising an imaginary glass. To barely surviving another day, Plinkett corrected, a shadow of a smile on his face. And as the stars drifted lazily past the view screen, the Galactic Mayhem sailed on, a patchwork relic of a ship with a crew that was just about as cobbled together as its hull. But for all its faults, it was theirs. And for now, that was enough. The Galactic Mayhem limped through the void like a drunk trying to find his way back to the bar. The ship's systems were straining under the pressure, much like Plinkett after his third divorce. With any luck, whatever those aliens were, they'd be too busy licking their wounds to give chase anytime soon. Jax was back at her panel, this time actually fixing it instead of just pretending. Her fingers danced over the controls with the kind of grace that would make a drunken octopus proud. You know, she said, not looking up, I'm starting to think this ship has a death wish. Death wish, please, Plinkett scoffed. The mayhem is like an old dog. Just waiting for the perfect moment to keel over on your favorite rug. Charming, Jax replied, her voice a mix of sarcasm and affection. Really gives me hope for my future. The AI, apparently feeling left out of the banter, chimed in with its signature unwelcome optimism. Captain, I'm detecting an anomaly in the cargo hold. An anomaly? Plinkett raised an eyebrow. Can you be more specific? We've got anomalies coming out of our ears. Something's moving, Captain, it clarified. Something that wasn't moving before. Well, that's fantastic, Plinkett muttered. I was worried today was going to be boring after all. He pushed himself up from his chair with all the enthusiasm of a man heading to his own execution. Let's go see what's trying to kill us this time. On it, Jax said, grabbing her favorite wrench. It was less a tool and more a security blanket at this point. As they headed toward the cargo hold, the ship sighed and creaked like it knew something was up and wasn't too happy about it. Plinkett couldn't blame it. He wasn't thrilled either. The cargo hold was about as welcoming as a morgue, dim lights casting long shadows over the crates stacked haphazardly like a child's game of blocks gone wrong. All right, Plinkett said, scanning the room. Where's our hitchhiker? Jax pointed to a crate near the back. That one. It's rocking like a cradle in a hurricane. They approached slowly, Jax gripping her wrench like she was hoping it would turn into a sword if she believed hard enough. Plinkett, for his part, was ready to negotiate with whatever was in there, provided it wasn't planning on eating his face. The crate shuddered again, and with a loud crack, the lid popped off, revealing something that looked like a cross between a tarantula and a particularly disgruntled octopus. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that's not one of our flamingos, Jax said, her voice laced with just enough sarcasm to let Plinkett know she was one step away from fleeing. Definitely not. Plinkett eyed the creature. It was shifting, its form blurring and changing like it couldn't decide which nightmare it wanted to be. Great, Jax sighed. A shapeshifter. Just what we needed. The creature's form settled into something vaguely humanoid, although it looked like it had been sketched by someone with only a passing familiarity with the human body. Surrender, it said, voice warbling as it tried to mimic their language. You will comply. Nice try, Plinkett said, crossing his arms. If you're trying to intimidate us, you might want to work on your delivery. The creature blinked, confused. Comply, it repeated, unsure of itself now. Oh, we'd love to, Jax said, flashing a grin. But our diary's packed full of not complying at the moment. The creature seemed to consider this, the parts of its brain responsible for understanding sarcasm clearly rustier than the Mayhem's hull. You will comply, it insisted, this time with less certainty. Look, Plinkett said, stepping forward. I get it, you want something, but we're just a couple of idiots trying to make a living by not getting blowed up. So why don't you climb back in your box and we can pretend this never happened? The alien blinked slowly, its form wavering. It was like watching a bad holo movie with terrible special effects. What is blowed up? It asked, curiosity piqued. See, Jax jumped in. Now that's a question. You're asking the right stuff. Blowed up is what happens when you don't leave us alone. The creature paused, processing this. You bluff, kid, Plinkett said, a grin spreading across his face. I've been bluffing my whole life. He gestured to the ship around them. This whole operation is one big bluff. The alien shifted again, its form flickering as it reverted to its original, more unsettling shape. You will help us, or we will assume your identity. Assume away, Jax said. Good luck with the credit debt. And the ex-wives. The creature hesitated. It seemed human unpredictability wasn't part of its training. We will return, it threatened, though even it seemed unsure how it was going to pull that off. Yeah, I've heard that one before, Plinkett said, waving it off. Take a number. With a final hiss, the creature slithered back into the crate, the lid snapping shut with an ominous thunk. Plinkett and Jax stood there for a moment, the silence of the cargo hold more oppressive than usual. So, Jax said, voice carefully neutral. What do we do with that? Plinkett rubbed his chin, considering. We could try and sell it to a zoo. Or a circus, Jax added. Or a government black ops program. They shared a look, both knowing none of that was going to happen. We should probably just dump it, Plinkett sighed. I don't fancy waking up one day to find it's replaced me with a version that actually does paperwork. Jax nodded. Right. Let's just get it off the ship first chance we get. Agreed. Plinkett looked around the cargo hold, as if expecting more surprises to pop out of the woodwork. Next time, remind me to check what exactly we're hauling. Sure thing, Cap, Jax said. Right after I teach the AI to make a decent cup of coffee. They made their way back to the bridge, leaving the alien in its crate, hopefully contemplating the error of its ways. The ship hummed around them, the AI waiting patiently for instructions. Captain, it chimed in as they approached. The Blorvax vessel has resumed its course toward us. Blorvax, huh? Plinkett settled into his chair, feeling the weight of the universe sitting heavily on his shoulders. Sounds like something you'd find growing in the back of my fridge. They are a species known for their ability to mimic others, the AI continued, blissfully unaware of the humor. They have been known to infiltrate and replace key individuals. So, we're dealing with space doppelgangers, Jax said, dropping into her own seat. Fantastic. As if the original us wasn't bad enough. Well, at least they're aiming low, Plinkett said. Could have gone after someone important. The AI persisted with its optimism. Their technology is advanced, but they have difficulty understanding human behavior. It is unpredictable. Unpredictable is just code for too stupid to have a plan, Jax observed. Our special talent. Let's keep them guessing, Plinkett decided, a plan forming in the murky depths of his mind. We'll zig when they think we'll zag. More like zig when they think we've got any idea where we're going, Jax corrected. Exactly, Plinkett said, grinning. Let's give them a good runaround. The Galactic Mayhem might have been a heap of barely functional metal, but it was their heap. And if the Blorvax thought they were taking it without a fight, they were in for a disappointment. Prepare for evasive maneuvers, Plinkett ordered, hoping the ship wouldn't fall apart the moment they tried anything too fancy. The AI complied, adjusting their course with the kind of precision that only a machine not made of rust and regrets could manage. The Mayhem groaned, engines sputtering like an old man trying to get out of bed on a cold morning. Here they come, Jax said, pointing to the holo display where the Blorvax ship was making its approach. All right, Plinkett said, cracking his knuckles. Let's show them what unpredictable really looks like. The Mayhem lurched to the side, the maneuver throwing them off their seats and into one of the many walls that had been repainted more times than Plinkett cared to remember. The Blorvax ship overshot them, clearly unprepared for a ship as unpredictable as its crew. Did they just miss us? Jax asked, incredulous. Seems like it, Plinkett said, spitting out a bit of blood where he'd bitten his tongue. Guess they really didn't see that coming. Shall we keep it up? Jax asked, fingers dancing over the controls like a conductor directing a particularly suicidal symphony. Let's, Plinkett agreed, feeling a thrill of something that might have been excitement, or maybe indigestion. It was hard to tell these days. The Mayhem spun in a series of erratic maneuvers that would have baffled even the most seasoned pilots. The Blorvax scrambled to keep up, their more sophisticated systems apparently not programmed to deal with suicidal tendencies. They're losing track of us, the AI reported, almost sounding impressed. Unpredictable, Jax said with a smirk. Our one true weapon. Let's not waste it, Plinkett replied, steering them toward the nearest slipstream that would take them far from here. The Blorvax might have been more advanced, more prepared, but they lacked the one thing the crew of the Galactic Mayhem had in spades, a complete disregard for their own safety. The alien ship fell further behind, its attempts to replicate their erratic course failing spectacularly. They're pulling back, the AI confirmed, almost as if it couldn't quite believe it. Guess they didn't want to play after all, Plinkett said, settling back in his chair. They'll be back, Jax warned, though there was a note of admiration in her voice. Of course they will, Plinkett agreed. But for now, let's just enjoy the peace. As the Mayhem sailed on, crew intact and ship mostly whole, the void stretched out before them. Unpredictable, perhaps, but that's exactly how Plinkett liked it. Jax, he said, turning to his engineer. Let's find the next salvageable thing we can call a destination. You got it, Cap, she replied, and there was something in her voice that told him they'd be all right. At least for another day. And as the stars passed by, distant and uncaring, the crew of the Galactic Mayhem carried on, one disastrous maneuver at a time. The Galactic Mayhem was no stranger to chaos, but even the most seasoned of spacefarers could admit that a good old-fashioned identity crisis was a bit much. The Blorvax shapeshifters, bless their gelatinous souls, had no clue what they'd signed up for. Apparently, capturing and impersonating a crew of human misfits was harder than it looked on whatever late-night infomercial they'd been watching. In the mess hall, Quibbles was hunched over a bowl of something that had once aspired to be soup. He poked at it suspiciously. I don't remember ordering existential dread with a side of confusion. Plinkett slumped into the seat opposite him, looking like he'd just crawled out of a bin, which, to be fair, wasn't far off. Thought you'd like a bit of variety. Keeps you young. Quibbles sniffed the air, hesitant. Hope you didn't pay extra for the aroma. I didn't pay at all. It's part of the charm of ship life. You get what you don't pay for. Jax wandered in, trailed by a faint smell of burnt wires and bad decisions. Captain, we have a problem. Another one? Plinkett quipped, his fingers tapping a discordant rhythm on the table. Thought we were fresh out. Well, Jax said, pulling out a chair with a screech that could make metal weep. Either the ship's caught a bout of schizophrenia or we've got company. Quibbles raised an eyebrow, half his attention still on his untrustworthy meal. Let me guess. The shapeshifters. Ding ding, give the man a prize, Jax replied, rolling her eyes. Seems like our new friends are trying to blend in. Badly. Define, badly, Plinkett urged, leaning forward, genuinely intrigued. They tried to imitate me earlier, she said, folding her arms. Offered me a cup of coffee. Said I looked tired. Plinkett snorted. Clearly not you, then. Exactly. I don't do coffee. That's how I know it's them. Quibbles looked up from his soup, curious now. So what's the plan? Besides panicking, of course. Plinkett scratched his chin, a thoughtful look crossing his face. We need a way to flush 'em out. Something they can't fake. Well, Jax said, tapping her chin in thought, they're terrible at sarcasm. Maybe we can confuse them with a few choice quips. Quibbles sighed, poking at his soup again. That explains why they haven't killed us yet. They probably don't understand a word we're saying. The ship's AI chose that moment to chime in, its voice as annoyingly cheerful as ever. Captain, I have detected unusual behavior patterns consistent with alien infiltration. No kidding, Plinkett muttered. Thanks for the heads up. I am here to assist, the AI replied, sounding almost hurt. Would you like me to execute a scan for irregularities? Quibbles shook his head. Don't bother, we've got a better plan. Oh, the AI seemed curious. What would that be? Pure, unadulterated chaos, Jax said with a wicked grin. Let's see them mimic that. The crew gathered in the cargo hold, every member looking slightly more disheveled than usual. Which, for this bunch, was saying something. Plinkett stood at the center, trying his best to look inspirational. It wasn't working. All right, listen up, he called, voice echoing through the dimly lit space. By now, you've probably noticed a few oddities among us. Like the fact that we're still alive. A voice piped up from the back. Exactly, we've got shapeshifters on board, and they're trying to blend in. But they're about as subtle as a stun grenade in a library. And your point, Captain? Asked a crew member with a face like a bulldog chewing a wasp. We're going to confuse the hell out of them, Plinkett declared. We're going to act like ourselves, only more so. The crew exchanged glances, trying to figure out if this was some kind of reverse psychology pep talk. Be unpredictable, be chaotic, basically, be yourselves, Plinkett continued. If they can't tell the difference between us and their own reflections, they won't know who or what to replace. Great, Jax added, clapping her hands. Let's make this ship into such a madhouse they'll wish they'd picked another target. Quibbles nodded, finally rising from his usual spot by the mess table. I can be as annoying as the next guy. I believe in you, Plinkett said, clapping him on the back hard enough to make him wince. Now, let's turn this mess into an art form. Within hours, the Galactic Mayhem was a whirlwind of absurdity. Crew members were swapping uniforms, speaking in deliberately exaggerated accents, and making up ridiculous stories. It was like a bad avant-garde play, with each actor trying to outdo the last. Jax wandered the halls with a clipboard, asking random crew members for their favorite existential crisis, while pretending to take notes. Plinkett had taken to wearing his jacket inside out, claiming it was the new fashion trend. And Quibbles had adopted a pet rock, which he insisted was a new crew member named Dwayne. Even the ship's AI got in on the act, altering its voice to random pitches and speaking in nonsensical tongues. At one point, it announced the imminent arrival of the giant spaghetti monster, which sent a few nervous crew members scurrying for cover. The Blorvax had to be losing their collective minds trying to keep up with this nonsense. More than once, a crew member would call out an imposter only for them to vanish in a blur of shifting flesh and confusion. See, Jax laughed, catching one in the act. I knew you couldn't resist correcting me when I said the word, anti-disestablishmentarianism, wrong. The alien blinked at her, its form flickering between shapes before it darted off in a panic, as if it had been caught naked in a public square. That's another one down, Plinkett said, watching it go. At this rate, they'll be gone by lunchtime. Even better, Jax replied. I get the feeling they don't like our cooking. Who does? Quibbles muttered, still cradling his pet rock. As the chaos continued, Plinkett and Jax rendezvoused on the bridge, both looking a shade more exhausted but undeniably pleased with themselves. How's the morale? Plinkett asked, leaning back in his chair. Pretty high, all things considered, Jax replied, adopting the same lazy pose. Nothing like confusing the enemy to bring people together. Let's hope we've confused them enough to make them rethink this whole invasion thing. Jax chuckled. Who knew our greatest defense was being an absolute mess? I did, Plinkett said, a smug grin spreading across his face. Years of experience being a disaster finally paying off. Their moment of reflective pride was interrupted by the AI's sudden announcement. Captain, the Blorvax vessel is retreating. Really? Plinkett sat up, a spark of hope in his eyes. They're leaving? Affirmative, the AI replied. They appear to be retreating at a rapid pace. Guess they tangled with the wrong crew, Jax said, punching Plinkett lightly on the arm. Or they just couldn't handle the insanity, Plinkett added, a hint of relief seeping into his voice. Either way, I'll take it. The crew gathered once more, a collective sigh of relief echoing through the ship. Their brief bout of madness had paid off, and for now, the threat had receded. Good work, everyone, Plinkett said, addressing the crew. We might not be the most conventional bunch, but we've got our own kind of genius. Quibbles raised his pet rock in salute. To chaotic genius, he declared, prompting a round of laughter and agreement from the crew. Let's not get too comfortable, Jax warned, ever the voice of reason. They might come back. Sure, Plinkett agreed, though his tone was more relaxed than it had been in weeks. But when they do, we'll be ready. The crew dispersed, each member returning to their duties with a sense of camaraderie that had been missing for some time. In the end, it wasn't fancy tech or brilliant strategies that saved them. It was their ability to be unapologetically, irreversibly human. As the Galactic Mayhem drifted through the stars, its path as erratic as its crew, Plinkett couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Maybe the universe wasn't as hopelessly grim as it seemed. Or maybe it was, and they were just too stubborn to let it win. Either way, it was bound to be one hell of a ride. The Galactic Mayhem's cargo hold, now a circus of human absurdity, buzzed with the crew's latest antics. Jax was orchestrating the chaos, her clipboard becoming a weapon of mass confusion as she interviewed crewmates about their most irrational fears. So, tell me, what terrifies you more? she asked a tall crewman with a tattoo that looked like a drunk octopus. A black hole or your ex's cooking? Both end in death, he replied with a shrug, but at least the black hole spares you the indigestion. Jack scribbled something nonsensical down, nodding as if she'd just cracked the code to the universe. Good to know, I'll be sure to pass that along to the captain. Meanwhile, Captain Plinkett was in the corner, attempting to impersonate a motivational speaker who'd been fired for excessive pessimism. Remember folks, he announced, voice dripping with sarcasm, your life is your own, and that's the tragedy of it. Quibbles was busy demonstrating the fine art of rock juggling, with his single rock, Dwayne, and failing spectacularly. See, it's all about the wrist action, he claimed, as Dwayne thunked to the floor. Having a productive day? Plinkett asked, sidling up to Quibbles while pretending not to notice the repeated clang of rock on metal. Very. Dwayne's considering a career change. He's tired of being a pet rock and wants to explore his potential as a paperweight, Quibbles replied, deadpan. Ambitious for a rock? Yeah, well, he's always been a bit of a dreamer. The ship's AI, in an attempt to match the general insanity, was busy projecting its holo display of a kaleidoscope of colors and random images, occasionally flashing the words, "Do not panic," in bold letters, just to keep things interesting. AI, what do you think the odds are of us all surviving this? Plinkett asked, curious. Calculating, it responded cheerfully, but given current circumstances, I'd say your odds are about as good as a snowball's chance in a star. Comforting, Plinkett said. I'll remember that when I'm writing my will. In the control room, the ship's instruments were blinking in a way that suggested either a severe malfunction or that they were part of the crew's new, chaos, plan. Jax took a moment to survey the room, admiring the effect their mock insanity had on the alien intruders. Think they're convinced yet? Jax asked, glancing at Plinkett, who was now deep in thought about whether to wear his jacket upside down next. They're either convinced or considering that maybe they've been in a coma this whole time, Plinkett replied, tapping his chin. Either way, it works in our favor. At that moment, a Blorvax, poorly disguised as a crew member, wandered in. It had taken on the shape of a man whose face screamed, I made terrible life choices. The alien's eyes darted around, clearly distressed by the chaotic energy. Hey, new guy, Quibbles called out, waving his pet rock. Can you juggle? The alien blinked, obviously confused. Juggle? Sure. Quibbles tossed Dwayne to the unsuspecting imposter, who caught it with a reflex that screamed, alien reflexes. Now, the trick is to add more rocks. The Blorvax fumbled, desperately trying to maintain its human guise under the scrutiny of every eye in the room. No, I cannot juggle. Ah, well, Quibbles said, shrugging as he caught his beloved Dwayne back. Juggling's overrated anyway. What about existential dread? You any good at that? Great, maybe start with the fear of cosmic insignificance, Plinkett suggested, his grin widening as the alien's form flickered under the pressure. That's a crowd favorite. The alien hesitated, then, unable to handle the mounting absurdity, dropped the rock and bolted, its human form slipping like oil off a pan. Another one bites the dust, Jax commented, smirking as the alien's true form flickered for a second before vanishing into the corridor. By the time the crew set up camp in the mess hall for a much-needed break, it was clear their strategy was working. The Blorvax were on edge, their attempts to infiltrate the crew thwarted by the very thing humans excelled at, being a complete mess. Anyone else feel like we're living in a bad sitcom? A crew member asked, taking a bite of whatever mysterious concoction the kitchen had deemed edible. Cheer up, Jax said, leaning against the wall. At least in sitcoms, the idiots always come out on top. Does that make us the idiots? Quibbles queried, before shrugging. Guess I can live with that. We might be idiots, Plinkett said, raising his mug of what he hoped was coffee, but we're idiots with a plan. As if on cue, the AI chimed in again, this time sounding like it was high on sunshine. Captain, the Blorvax are attempting to communicate. Oh great, Plinkett said, settling back in his seat. Put him through. Let's see what our baffled buddies want. The holo display flickered to life, revealing a Blorvax who looked like it had aged prematurely trying to make sense of human madness. Its eyes narrowed, attempting to project authority, but coming off more like a parent losing a fight with a toddler. Humans, it began, voice a garbled echo, your methods are unconventional. Glad you noticed, Plinkett replied, leaning forward with a grin. We pride ourselves on it. The Blorvax seemed unsure whether it was being mocked. Your behavior is illogical. We were not prepared for such unpredictability. Welcome to humanity, Jax chimed in, arms crossed. We never claimed to be logical. We demand you cease this madness at once, the Blorvax insisted, losing some of its composure. Plinkett just laughed. Sure thing, as soon as you guys stop trying to impersonate us. The alien hesitated, clearly torn between its mission and its growing frustration. "You will regret this, humans." "You first," Quibbles muttered, loud enough for the transmission to pick up. The Blorvax's form flickered again before the signal cut out, leaving the crew in a chorus of chuckles and mutual backslapping. "Well," Plinkett said, raising his mug again, "I'd call that a win." Jax nodded, studying the now blank holo display. "For now, at least. But let's not drop our guard." "Who said anything about dropping guard?" Plinkett asked, still grinning. "We've just got more chaos to spread." "Speaking of which," Quibbles interjected, "Dwayne's got a new plan. He thinks we should start a cult." Plinkett snorted. "A cult, huh? I suppose rocks make good idols." "Solid idea," Jax added, rolling her eyes at Quibbles' antics. "Let's hope the Blorvax aren't religious." And sir, the absurdity continued. The crew turned the Galactic Mayhem into a living nightmare for any alien foolish enough to try and blend in. With each passing hour, the Blorvax found themselves more tangled in the web of human creativity and sheer lunacy. The aliens' frustration was palpable, their infiltration attempts growing more half-hearted with each encounter. The crew adopted even more bizarre behavior, determined to keep the upper hand. Plinkett and Jax brainstormed over rancid coffee, each cup a testament to their endurance. "We need something big," Jax said, eyes fierce with determination. "Bigger than a rock cult?" Plinkett asked, feigning shock. "You're ambitious." "We're going to push them over the edge," Jax decided. "Let's show them the real meaning of human madness." They crafted the masterstroke of their plan, a ship-wide talent show. But not just any talent show, one where the rules changed every 5 minutes, and the goal was to confuse the hell out of anyone who dared participate. The galaxy's weirdest event was set in motion. Crew members performed talents that even they didn't know they had, switching costumes and acts without warning. The Blorvax, trying to navigate this new level of human insanity, were left reeling. As Jax juggled hand grenades in the cargo hold, with the pins securely fastened, of course, Plinkett led a chorus of off-key singing through the ship's intercom, each verse more ludicrous than the last. "Sing it, people," Plinkett shouted, laughter in his voice. "We're gonna drive them to the stars." And as the echoes of their discordant melody reverberated through the ship, the Blorvax finally cracked. Their attempts to mimic the crew became more desperate, their forms flickering as they tried to comprehend the incomprehensible. Finally, it was too much. The Blorvax retreated once more, defeated by the one thing they hadn't anticipated: the irrepressible, unpredictable, gloriously chaotic nature of humanity. "Looks like they've hit their limit," Jax said, watching the Blorvax ship's engines flare one last time on the holo display. "Good riddance," Quibbles agreed, lifting Dwayne in salute. "Guess they couldn't handle the awesome power of a little rock." Plinkett chuckled, leaning back with satisfaction as the crew celebrated. "We did it, folks. We actually managed to out-crazy the aliens." Jax nodded, a rare smile breaking through her usual stoic demeanor. "Let's hope they spread the word. The Galactic Mayhem isn't to be trifled with." And as the ship drifted once more through the vast, indifferent cosmos, the crew settled back into their routine. There would always be more threats, more challenges, more madness. But for now, they basked in the knowledge that they'd proven themselves in the most human way possible, by turning chaos into their greatest weapon. "All right," Plinkett said, raising his cup in a final toast to insanity. "To insanity," the crew echoed, laughing as they clinked their mugs together. The Galactic Mayhem sailed on, its journey as unpredictable as its crew, carrying with it the promise of more adventures, more challenges, and more delightful, unpredictable human chaos. The Galactic Mayhem swam through space with all the grace of a drunkard attempting ballet. The crew's recent victory over the Blorvax was a fleeting moment of triumph, now overshadowed by a more ominous reality. Turns out, the Blorvax weren't sore losers, they were sore planners. The partial takeover plan had been in motion even as Plinkett and his ragtag team were celebrating with their dubious beverages. It started with the lights flickering, a subtle warning that the ship was about to go from barely functioning to actively sabotaging you. Jax slapped the wall panel with the kind of determination that hoped technology responded better to violence. "Come on, you piece of junk," she muttered. The wall, apparently uninterested in her demands, continued to ignore her. The AI, still annoyingly chipper despite the circumstances, chimed in, "Captain, several systems are showing signs of Blorvax interference. I estimate a 73% probability they'll gain control without intervention." "Intervention, huh?" Plinkett muttered, sipping what tasted like coffee but might have been hydraulic fluid. "And what do you suggest?" "Prayer, an unlikely strategy for success," the AI replied, missing the sarcasm by a light year. Jack stood at the panel, eyes scanning the chaotic dance of blinking lights. Looks like they've got their slippery tentacles in deeper than we thought, she said, slapping Plinkett on the back. Guess it's time for Plan B. Plan B? Plinkett asked, raising an eyebrow. You mean the one where we run around screaming until we figure something out? I was thinking more, strategic retreat to regroup, but your idea sounds fun too, Jack shot back with a grin that was far too cheerful for the situation. The Blorvax, having learned from the direct approach, had decided to play smart, or as smart as shape-shifting squid things could manage. They'd commandeered the ship's life support systems, boosting the humidity to a level more suitable for a bog than a spaceship. The crew was turning into a sweaty mess, shirts sticking to skin like cling film to a casserole dish. Quibbles, of course, had taken this as an opportunity to strip down to his undershirt and let Dwayne experience life in the tropics. You know, if the Blorvax wanted to turn us into a sauna, they could have just asked, he quipped, trying and failing to wipe the sweat from his brow. Yeah, next time I'm at a space station, remind me to pick up a giant fan, Jack said, tugging at her damp collar. Preferably one that can blow alien scum out the airlock. Morale was a shadow of its former self. The crew, once uplifted by their antics, now sat slumped at the mess hall tables, poking at food that had developed an unidentifiable sheen due to the humidity. Plinkett looked around at his team, trying to muster some semblance of leadership. All right, folks, he began, clapping his hands for attention. We've beaten these Blorvax idiots once, we can do it again. His voice had the conviction of a half-hearted pep talk, somewhere between motivational and desperate. Jack snorted. Sure, if we don't all turn into human puddles first. Hey, who doesn't love a good steam bath? Plinkett quipped, though the joke fell flat among the crew. You know, Dwayne's looking shinier than ever, Quibbles chimed in, holding up his pet rock. Maybe we should all take a leaf out of his book and just rock out. The AI, blissfully unaware of tone, offered, the Blorvax's strategy seems to be targeting morale. Perhaps a counter-strategy could involve karaoke. The suggestion was met with groans loud enough to wake any sleeping Blorvax. Yeah, sure, Plinkett said, rubbing his temples. We'll sing, out of our ship. That'll do it. Still, there was no denying the situation was dire. With the humidity rising and the Blorvax tightening their grip, the Galactic Mayhem was teetering on the brink of becoming a very expensive alien spa. Jax groaned and leaned back, her chair creaking ominously. You know, I was hoping my death would be something more heroic than melted by alien humidity in space. Plinkett, not one to miss a chance for gallows humor, replied, Hey, at least you're not dying alone. There's a certain camaraderie in being reduced to human soup. The ship's systems continued to flutter and blink, a light show of futility. The AI, as if sensing the crew's frustration, piped up again. Perhaps a coordinated effort could disrupt their control. A localized EMP might break their hold, though it would disable our systems as well, Captain. Great, Jack sighed. So, we either fry everything or drown in our own sweat. Love the options here. It's like picking between a rock and a hard place, Plinkett said, nodding towards Dwayne. No offense, Quibbles. None taken, Quibbles replied. Dwayne loves a good crisis. As the crew debated which flavor of catastrophe they preferred, a sudden jolt shook the ship. The Blorvax had begun another phase of their takeover, this time targeting the ship's navigation. The Galactic Mayhem lurched, sending crew members tumbling from their seats. Well, that's new, Plinkett grumbled, pushing himself upright. Guess they decided to drive. The AI's voice, still horribly perky, crackled through the chaos. Captain, the Blorvax are attempting to alter our course. They appear to be steering us into an asteroid field. Perfect, Jax muttered, grabbing at the wall for support. From sauna to blender, just what I needed. Plinkett, struggling to maintain a sense of control, barked orders, all right, everyone to your stations. If we're going down, let's at least make it difficult for them. The crew scrambled, each person doing their part to wrest control back from their alien intruders. Jax and Plinkett rushed to the control room, the former cursing under her breath with every step. In the control room, the scene was a frantic dance of flashing lights and alarms blaring like a cacophony of doom. The Blorvax's presence was felt in every glitch and malfunction as they pushed the ship closer to destruction. Jax, any ideas? Plinkett asked, hands flying over the controls in a desperate attempt to regain some semblance of navigation. Yeah, one, Jax replied, her voice steely. We hit them with everything we've got in one big, dumb move. Overload the systems, let the EMP fly, and pray. Always wanted to go out with a bang, Plinkett quipped, though his smile was forced. The plan was madness, which was fitting given their circumstances. With no other options, the crew prepared for the Hail Mary of technological sabotage. It was risky, hell, it was suicidal, But when fate handed you lemons, sometimes you just had to squeeze them in fate's eyes and hope for the best. As the ship lurched, Plinkett shouted, "On my mark. Jax, you ready?" "Born ready," Jax replied, her own fingers poised over the panel controls, ready to unleash chaos. The moment stretched, every breath a promise of impending disaster. The crew held their positions, each one a cog in the machine of desperation. "Now," Plinkett barked, and the ship filled with a symphony of electronic wails as systems overloaded, electricity arcing in a brilliant, destructive display. The Galactic Mayhem shuddered violently, lights flickering before plunging the ship into darkness. For a brief moment, the universe was silent, the crew holding their breath as they waited to see if their gamble had paid off. And then, slowly, the lights returned, dim and weak, but there. The AI's voice was the first to break the silence, sounding remarkably calm given the circumstances. "Systems reset successful, Captain. Blorvax interference reduced by 80%. Plinkett let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "Guess we're not dead yet," he said, flashing a tired grin at Jax. Jax nodded, wiping sweat from her brow. "Nope, just mostly dead." "Mostly dead is better than all dead," Quibbles chimed in, appearing at the doorway with Dwayne in hand. "Plus, Dwayne approves of the fireworks." The crew shared a collective laugh, relief mingling with exhaustion as they took stock of their situation. The Blorvax hadn't been beaten yet, but the crew had managed to claw back a small victory. It wasn't much, but it was something to build on. Plinkett gathered his crew, the sense of camaraderie stronger now than ever. "All right, folks, we've still got a long way to go, but we've shown these Blorvax what we're made of. Let's keep hitting them where it hurts." Jax offered a rare smile, her eyes glinting with renewed determination. "And maybe next time, we can make them regret ever setting their slimy sights on us." Quibbles lifted Dwayne in a victorious salute. "To chaos and survival, then." "To chaos and survival," the crew echoed, spirits lifting as they prepared for the next round. The Galactic Mayhem might be battered, but it was far from broken. And with a crew full of mad geniuses at the helm, even the vast, indifferent cosmos had to watch its back. In the dimly lit recesses of the Galactic Mayhem's cargo hold, a figure emerged from the shadows, navigating the clutter with a grace that belied the chaos of the ship. It was Blip, a human clone who had somehow managed to retain a personality despite being one of countless copies. He was a living testament to the power of randomness, with a penchant for unpredictable behavior that made him as reliable as a thruster malfunction. Blip had his own unique approach to problem solving: create chaos and see what shakes loose. It wasn't a strategy you'd find in military manuals, but there was something to be said for unpredictability when dealing with shape-shifting squid things. With the crew battered and bruised from the last battle, Blip decided it was time to take matters into his own glitchy hands. "Hey, Plinkett," Blip called out, sidling up to the captain, who was nursing a mug of something that probably shouldn't be drunk. "You ever consider that maybe chaos is our best weapon?" Plinkett gave him a sidelong look, the kind that suggested he was re-evaluating every decision that had led to this moment. "Blip, if I wanted advice on chaos, I'd talk to a black hole." "Exactly," Blip said with enthusiasm that bordered on insanity. "So, why not let me do my thing? Cause a little havoc, see if the Blorvax can handle a taste of their own medicine." Jax leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "And what's your plan? Throw a party and hope they RSVP, no?" Blip grinned, a rogue smile that promised either brilliance or madness, or perhaps both. "Something like that, but with more explosions and fewer cheese platters." Plinkett sighed, the kind of weary exhale that comes from long exposure to idiocy. "All right, Blip, let's see what your special brand of chaos can do. But if you get us all killed, I'm holding you personally responsible." Blip saluted, though it was more of a mock salute that spoke volumes about his respect for authority. "Roger that, Cap'n. Time to give those Blorvax a reason to regret their little spa venture." With that, Blip disappeared into the depths of the ship, a human whirlwind of mischief and potential. If anyone could sow discord among the Blorvax, it was him. Meanwhile, Quibbles and Jax were trying to restore some semblance of order in the control room. "You think Blip's got a chance at making things worse?" Quibbles asked, fiddling with a panel that was working about as well as a toaster in a rainstorm. Jax shrugged, not looking up from her own assortment of wires and blinking lights. "Blip's whole existence is a gamble. Sometimes you get lucky, other times you get a monkey wrench to the face." The ship, now slightly less sauna-like thanks to their earlier efforts, still felt like a pressure cooker with a broken valve. Systems beeped and buzzed, a symphony of technological distress. But the crew had grown accustomed to the noise, like living next to a freeway, a very loud, very temperamental freeway. "All right," Jax said, stepping back from the panel. "I think I've got the humidity settings back under control. At least now it won't feel like we're breathing through wet socks." Quibbles, still juggling with Dwayne, nodded approvingly. That's the spirit. Maybe we can use this to our advantage, lure the Blorvax into thinking we're too distracted to fight back. Or maybe, Jax replied with a smirk, Blip will blow up half the ship and do the job for us. Elsewhere, deep within the bowels of the Galactic Mayhem, Blip was hard at work, his fingers flying over a control panel that had seen better days. Wires sparked and crackled as he enacted his grand design of chaos. The Blorvax had made a mistake, and Blip was about to exploit it with the finesse of a bull in a china shop. He hummed to himself, a jaunty little tune that matched the glint in his eye. For all their cunning, the Blorvax hadn't anticipated the one thing humans excelled at, making a mess of things. Time to test your reflexes, you slimy bastards, Blip muttered as he initiated a sequence that sent a cascade of noise through the ship's systems, a sonic disruption that would make even the most disciplined Blorvax squirm. Back in the control room, Plinkett, Jax, and Quibbles watched as the Blorvax's hold on their systems flickered. A series of holographic displays blinked erratically, showing the confused movements of the alien intruders as they struggled to maintain control. Blip's doing something, Jax remarked, eyes on the erratic patterns. I'd be worried if he wasn't, Plinkett replied dryly. But let's see if this dance of his buys us some breathing room. The crew's attention turned to the holo display, a chaotic mess of figures and broken signals. The Blorvax were scrambling, their shape-shifting abilities failing to keep pace with the sudden onslaught of noise and confusion. Blip's unconventional warfare was working, creating a fissure in the Blorvax's strategy. The crew could almost feel the shift, like the tide turning in their favor, assuming the tide was a malfunctioning wave generator on a cruise liner. Quibbles clapped his hands together, Dwayne bouncing precariously in his grasp. Looks like Blip's got them running in circles. Time for us to join the party. Plinkett nodded, a grim smile playing on his lips. All right, crew, let's hit them while they're down. Jax, see if you can mess with their communications. Quibbles, keep that rock of yours ready. We'll need all the help we can get. Jax and Quibbles moved with renewed purpose, fueled by Blip's unexpected success. They might be trapped in a malfunctioning spaceship, surrounded by hostile aliens, but they'd be damned if they weren't going to make those aliens regret every slimy second. With the Blorvax in disarray, the humans rallied, a crew of misfits and oddballs united by necessity and sheer stubbornness. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and possibly out of their minds, but for the first time in what felt like hours, they had the upper hand. Blip, meanwhile, was in his element. He moved through the ship's corridors like a ghost, leaving confusion and chaos in his wake. The Blorvax were responding, sending units to try and quell the disruption, but they were too slow, too clumsy to catch him. Catch me if you can, Blip whispered, darting between panels, his tinkering leaving a trail of disruption that had the Blorvax tearing their non-existent hair out. Back in the control room, Jax had managed to tap into the Blorvax communication signals, her fingers dancing over the controls like a pianist on a caffeine high. Got she announced, a triumphant edge to her voice. They're trying to regroup, but Blip's got 'em tangled up. Plinkett leaned over her shoulder, watching the screen with interest. Good work, Jax. Let's keep them guessing. Quibbles, you have a plan for when they come knocking? Plan? Quibbles echoed, raising an eyebrow. Who needs a plan when you've got Dwayne? The ship shuddered as another wave of Blorvax interference attempted to regain control. But the humans were ready, kicking into action with the fervor of cornered animals. Blip, for his part, continued his chaos crusade, delighting in the Blorvax's increasing frustration. Their shape-shifting abilities were useless against his erratic tactics, they simply couldn't adapt fast enough. As the battle raged, it became clear that Blip's insanity was their best weapon. The ship might have been on the brink, but for the first time, the crew felt like they were pulling ahead. In the mess hall, where the crew had gathered to regroup, the atmosphere was tense but hopeful. Sweat-streaked faces looked to Plinkett for guidance, their eyes holding the glint of defiance. All right, folks, Plinkett began, his voice carrying over the hum of the ship. Thanks to Blip, we've got a bit of breathing room. We can't let up now. We push, we prod, we make those Blorvax wish they'd never set foot on our ship. Jax, her usual cynicism giving way to determination, nodded. We'll keep them on the back foot, hit them from every angle. Let's make them dance to our tune. Quibbles raised Dwayne, a gesture of solidarity. To chaos, then, may it be our guiding star. The crew echoed the sentiment, a ragtag group of fighters ready to take on the universe. They were bloodied, but not beaten. Worn, but not broken. And with Blip leading the charge, their path forward was as clear as it was unpredictable. As the ship rumbled beneath them, the crew prepared for the next wave, united by a singular purpose: survive, fight back, and make the Blorvax regret ever crossing paths with humanity. In the heart of the chaos, Blip smiled, knowing he had given his crew the spark they needed. The Blorvax might have started this fight, but the humans were damn well going to finish it. "Alright, listen up, you lot of misfit carnies," Plinkett barked, standing in the center of the mess hall like a tyrant convening his council of fools. "Thanks to Blip's particular brand of lunacy, we've got the Blorvax on the ropes. Now it's time to make them dance to our tune." Jax smirked, leaning back in her chair with arms folded behind her head. "And here I thought our tune was, let's see how quickly we can blow ourselves up." "That's plan B," Plinkett shot back, with a grin as sharp as a shiv. "Right now, we stick with plan A. Give M hell and make it ugly." Quibbles chimed in, Dwayne the Rock spinning idly in his hand like a cosmic fidget toy. "Ugly's my middle name. Well, one of them. Bits and Pieces is the other." "Good to know," Plinkett replied dryly. "Jax, how's that comm interference holding?" Jax tapped a nearby console, fingers playing it like a virtuoso on a silent keyboard. "They're still bickering amongst themselves. Blip's little symphony of destruction has them more tangled than a cat in a yarn factory." "Perfect. Quibbles, your job's simple. Keep Dwayne handy. You never know when a hunk of spinning rock might come in handy." With an exaggerated salute, Quibbles nodded. "Dwayne's ready to roll whenever you are, Cap." Plinkett turned his attention to the ship's eye. "Hey, bucket of bolts. What's the status on those Blorvax? Still running around like headless chickens?" The AI flickered into life, projecting a cheerfully unsettling grin across the holo display. "Indeed, Captain, the Blorvax are displaying erratic behavior patterns. They seem confused. I find it delightful." "You would," Plinkett muttered, rubbing his temples. "All right, team, let's keep them guessing. The more we screw with them, the better our chances." "Ah, a classic human strategy," Jax said wryly. "Win by making the other guy screw up more than you do." Elsewhere on the ship, Blip was playing his own game of cat and mouse. If the mouse was hopped up on caffeine and the cat was a shape-shifting alien with a superiority complex. He ducked and weaved through the dimly lit corridors, leaving chaos in his wake like a toddler with a box of crayons. "Time for a little redecorating," he muttered under his breath, yanking out a handful of wires from a nearby panel. Sparks flew, and somewhere down the hall, a Blorvax wailed in frustration. Music to Blip's ears. He'd never been much for strategy. Cunning, sure. Tactics, absolutely not. But when it came to turning a situation on its head, he was a maestro. "Catch me if you can, slimy bastards," he whispered, darting into another corridor. Back in the mess hall, the crew was gearing up for what promised to be a right royal mess. Plinkett paced, his footsteps echoing in the metallic chamber. "Remember, we're not just fighting for survival here. Though that's a nice bonus. We're fighting for the right to be the biggest pains in the Blorvax's collective rear ends." Jax raised an eyebrow. "So, our freedom?" Plinkett grinned. "Exactly." Quibbles, ever the optimist, clutched Dwayne like a good luck charm. "With Blip turning the ship into a high-stakes funhouse, they won't know which way's up. But if they make it here, we let loose." And let loose they did. The Galactic Mayhem became a battlefield of bizarre tactics and plain old-fashioned human tenacity. As the Blorvax tried to regroup, the crew countered with unpredictability, the kind of unpredictability that only arose from desperation and a complete lack of decorum. In the chaos, Blip continued his one-man assault, ducking and weaving through the ship's bowels like a feral cat on a sugar high. His improvised sabotage had the Blorvax scrambling, their attempts to wrestle control turning into a slapstick routine that would have been comical if not for the life and death stakes. Meanwhile, Jax and Quibbles coordinated the ship's remaining defenses, keeping the Blorvax at bay with a combination of jury-rigged tech and sheer audacity. "Hey, Jax," Quibbles called over the clamor of alarms and malfunctioning machinery. "You think we can make it through this without blowing up the whole ship?" Jax snorted, not taking her eyes off the console. "I'm just hoping we blow up the right parts." The ship shuddered as another wave of Blorvax interference rolled through, the lights flickering ominously. But the crew held firm, buoyed by Blip's chaotic success and Plinkett's steadfast leadership. Back in the corridors, Blip found himself face to face with a Blorvax patrol. They hesitated, their shape-shifting forms flickering uncertainly in the dim light. "Looking for trouble?" Blip asked, a crooked grin splitting his face. "Well, you found it." He charged at them with all the finesse of a wrecking ball, his unpredictable movements throwing the Blorvax into disarray. They lashed out with tendrils and claws, but Blip was a whirlwind of chaos, slipping through their grasp like smoke. As he ducked and dodged, he triggered another wave of disruptions, sending the ship into a cacophony of blaring alarms and flashing lights. The Blorvax stumbled, their senses overwhelmed by the sensory onslaught. "Stay confused, stay stupid," Blip muttered, slipping past his would-be captors with a final taunting wave. That's the human way. In the mess hall, The crew cheered as the Blorvax's control continued to unravel. Their attacks grew more desperate, more erratic, but the humans fought back with a stubbornness that bordered on madness. Jax's eyes darted over the displays, tracking Blorvax movements with the precision of a hawk on the hunt. "They're breaking apart," she announced, her tone a mix of disbelief and satisfaction. "Blip's got them running scared." "Good," Plinkett said, grinning like a wolf. "Let's keep it that way." Quibbles, ever the optimist, hoisted Dwayne above his head. For chaos, the crew echoed, rallying behind their unconventional tactics. Together, they pushed forward, driving the Blorvax back through sheer force of will and the kind of creativity that could only come from a crew with nothing left to lose. And slowly, inexorably, the tide turned. The Blorvax's assault faltered, their shape-shifting forms flickering and glitching like a bad hologram. The humans pressed their advantage, striking hard and fast, turning the ship's very infrastructure into a weapon. In the end, it was Blip who delivered the final blow, a series of jury-rigged explosives that sent shockwaves through the ship, scattering the Blorvax like leaves in a storm. As the dust settled and the Blorvax began their retreat, the crew gathered in the mess hall, bruised and battered but undeniably victorious. Plinkett stood at the center, surveying his ragtag crew with a mix of pride and disbelief. "Well, we did it. We survived another day." Jax smirked, wiping sweat from her brow. "Barely, but hey, that's our style." Quibbles, with Dwayne still clutched firmly in his grasp, chuckled. "If it ain't ugly, it ain't us." The crew shared a weary laugh, their spirits buoyed by their unlikely triumph. They were battered, bruised, and utterly exhausted, but they'd done it. They'd fought off the Blorvax with nothing but grit, ingenuity, and a little bit of madness. Blip sauntered into the mess hall, a victorious grin plastered across his face. "Guess chaos really is our best weapon, huh?" Plinkett sighed, though there was a twinkle in his eye. "You still owe me for those explosions, Blip. Put it on my tab, Cap. It's gonna be a long one." As the crew settled in, licking their wounds and savoring their victory, they knew the fight wasn't over. But for now, they had a moment to breathe, to celebrate their defiance in the face of overwhelming odds. They were the crew of the Galactic Mayhem, survivors, fighters, and a testament to the power of human stubbornness. And if the universe wanted to throw more challenges their way, well, they'd be ready. After all, they'd just shown the Blorvax what happened when you underestimated a bunch of resourceful, irreverent humans. In the heart of the ship, the AI flickered to life, its cheery voice echoing through the room. "Congratulations, crew. You have successfully repelled the Blorvax incursion. Would you like to initiate celebratory protocols?" Plinkett snorted. "If that involves anything exploding, pass." The AI chirped cheerfully. "Noted, Captain. Initiating non-explosive celebratory protocols." And as the crew relaxed, basking in the glow of their unexpected victory, one thing was certain. They'd just proven that even in the vast, unforgiving expanse of space, humanity could still thrive, survive, and, every once in a while, emerge victorious against all odds. The mess hall was a wreck. Tables overturned, chairs in disarray, and the lingering stench of burnt circuitry mingling with, was that still yesterday's lunch? The crew of the Galactic Mayhem convened in their usual spot, a hodgepodge of misfits who, against all odds, had managed to keep their ship, and themselves, intact. Plinkett stood at the helm of this ragtag operation, his expression a mix of exhaustion and pride. "Well, congratulations, you bunch of lunatics. We survived." Jax leaned back in her chair, the smirk that was fast becoming her trademark plastered across her face. "Barely, but surviving's our specialty, isn't it? Like cockroaches but with better hygiene." Quibbles, clutching Dwayne like it was the Holy Grail and not just a glorified paperweight, nodded. "Great, now I can die knowing I lived to see another day of your cooking." The AI chimed in, its voice an unwelcome ray of sunshine in their otherwise grim existence. "Congratulations, crew. Initiating celebratory protocols." Plinkett winced. "Not the dancing again. Remember last time?" Blip nearly dislocated a shoulder trying to moonwalk. Blip, who had just staggered in, still riding the high of his recent one-man wrecking crew act, shrugged. "Improvisation, Captain. It's what we do best." "Improvisation is what got us into this mess," Plinkett retorted, an eyebrow raised. "Hey, if we can't break things creatively, then what's the point?" Blip countered, plopping into a chair and helping himself to whatever passed for a meal these days. Jax tapped on a console, eyes scanning the readouts with clinical detachment. "Systems are still glitchy, but the Blorvax are out of our hair for now. Probably regrouping, licking their wounds, and wondering how they got bested by a crew of glorified junk dealers." "Let em wonder," Plinkett said, his voice even. "We might be living in a tin can, but we're a resourceful bunch." Quibbles snorted. Resourceful is one word. I'd go with stubborn as hell. Stubborn's good, Jax mused. Gets the job done. The AI hummed a cheerful tune, its holographic face flickering through a series of expressions it imagined were comforting. Captain, if you require it, I can compile a list of nearby systems where we can restock necessary supplies. Yeah, like duct tape and nerve pills, Blip muttered. Quibbles, ever the optimist, bounced Dwayne in his hand. And maybe some new parts for this old clunker. Could use a facelift. Plinkett nodded, glancing around at his crew. All right, folks, let's set a course for the next pit stop. Somewhere quiet, where the locals don't shoot first and ask questions, never. That's a short list, Jax remarked dryly. But I'm sure you'll manage. We always do. The ship shuddered slightly as Jax adjusted their trajectory, the engines groaning like an old man getting out of bed. Galactic Mayhem was a glorified death trap, but it was their death trap, and they loved it all the same. So, what does the future hold for us, Captain? Quibbles asked, half mocking, half hopeful. Plinkett rubbed his chin, considering. More of the same, I reckon. Staying alive, keeping the ship from falling apart, trying not to start wars with every alien species we meet. Good luck with that last one, Blip said, his grin as irrepressible as ever. Jax crossed her arms, leaning back with a satisfied sigh. Long as there are no more Blorvax for a while, I'll take whatever comes. The AI's voice, annoyingly chipper, piped up again. Captain, I have located a suitable destination for resupply. A system not far from here, with reportedly hospitable inhabitants. Reportedly, Plinkett echoed, skeptically. Reportedly, the AI confirmed with a maddeningly pleasant tone. I am confident they will not shoot first. Jax rolled her eyes. That's a ringing endorsement if I've ever heard one. Blip shrugged, tossing a piece of something that might have once been food into his mouth. At least it gives us something to look forward to. Beats being floating debris. Plinkett glanced around, taking in the scene, the camaraderie, and the undeniable smell of victory mixed with engine coolant. All right, set the course. Let's see what trouble we can avoid this time. The crew dispersed, each to their tasks, navigating the precarious balance of maintaining the ship and not losing their minds. Quibbles stayed behind, twirling Dwayne absent-mindedly, a cosmic fidget spinner with a surprising amount of gravitas for a rock. Think the next stop will be any better? He asked Plinkett, who lingered at the door. Hope for the best, expect the worst, Plinkett replied without looking back. And keep your rock handy. Never know when it might come in useful. Quibbles chuckled, tossing Dwayne into the air and catching it with practiced ease. Always do, Cap, always do. As Galactic Mayhem lumbered through space, a patchwork quilt of repairs and memories, the crew settled into their new rhythm, each task no less vital than the last. They were a motley band of renegades, misfits, and dreamers, their resolve tempered by adversity and a shared refusal to bow down to fate. As Plinkett made his rounds, he couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope, a rare emotion in a universe that seemed hell-bent on beating it out of you. But they were still here, still kicking, and as long as they had breath in their lungs and a ship to call home, they'd keep fighting. Here's to the next adventure, Plinkett murmured to himself, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Whatever the hell it might be. The AI's voice broke into his thoughts, annoyingly cheerful as ever. Captain, I have detected a nearby celestial anomaly. Would you like to investigate? Plinkett sighed, more amused than exasperated. Why not? What's the worst that could happen? Famous last words, Jax called from her station, a grin on her face. Yeah, well, Plinkett replied, heading back to the bridge. I guess we wouldn't be us without a little danger. And sir, the crew of the Galactic Mayhem set off once more, charting a course through the uncharted, embracing the uncertainty of the void with the reckless abandon of those who had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. They were, after all, human, or the closest approximation thereof, and that meant being unpredictable, irreverent, and, above all, stubborn as hell. In a galaxy full of Blorvax and other nasties, it was their greatest weapon, the one thing that kept them going, kept them fighting, and kept them alive. And that, as far as Plinkett was concerned, was more than enough. As they sailed through the darkness, the crew couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of purpose, a realization that no matter the odds, they were more than capable of facing whatever the universe could throw their way. Together, they were unstoppable, a force of nature in their own right, and as long as they had each other, they could take on anything. With the stars shining bright and the promise of a new adventure on the horizon, the crew of the Galactic Mayhem forged ahead, ready to face whatever lay ahead with the same courage, humor, and tenacity that had brought them this far. After all, they were the crew of the Galactic Mayhem, and if there was one thing they knew how to do, it was survive, by any means necessary.